I uncovered 7 terrifying paramedic horror stories where the patients were not alone in the dark. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill crept down my spine, sending prickles across my skin. It was just another day in the city for me, a mundane Tuesday, my shift starting with the familiar hum of the sirens and chatter of dispatch. But the air felt heavy, almost electric, that day. The dim light in the station flickered. Cold seeped through the cracks in the window, wrapping around me in icy tendrils. I glanced at my partner, Dave, who was checking the supplies. His face was pale, wrinkles of tension etched deeper than usual. Something sat tight in my chest, a tightness I couldn't shake off, a feeling brewing deep within. Then the call came. A routine transfer, but as we drove, the atmosphere shifted. Dark clouds loomed overhead, swallowing the sun. Strange noises echoed, a creaking that wasn't just the old ambulance. Whispers. My heart raced. The air was thick with unease. We arrived at the scene, a rundown apartment building. Shadows flickered in the corners of my vision. I stepped out, the cold biting at my skin, and that noise, it followed me. A whisper. Low. Urgent. When I turned to Dave, he looked lost, eyes scanning the shadows like they held secrets. Inside the apartment, the patient lay still, pale as the sheets surrounding him. Something felt wrong. A shifting in the air. I could feel eyes on me. I glanced back at the door, the way it almost seemed to breathe, closing and pulling me closer to whatever was lurking in the dark. And then it happened. A loud crash from the other room. My pulse quickened. I could feel the hairs on my arms stand at attention. Something was wrong. Objects moved without reason. A chair slid across the floor, and a low moan echoed from the shadows, cold and distant. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, heart pounding. Dave just nodded, his expression pale as the moonlight creeping through the window. He stepped backward, eyes wide. "Let us get out of here," he urged, voice tight, but my feet wouldn't move. There was something electric about the energy around me, pulling me deeper in. Out of the darkness, a whisper sounded again, clearer this time. It called my name. Panic clawed at my throat. My hands trembled. I had to leave. But something flickered in the shadows, a figure, dragging itself closer, face hidden in the dark. I could barely breathe. I felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. Just as I turned to scream, a slam echoed throughout the room. The door slammed shut, trapping us inside. I never should have opened that door. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air grew denser, wrapping around me like a wet blanket. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to pull away from the suffocating mass of dark energy, but it clung to me, seeping into my very bones. The slam reverberated in my ears, a finality that sent a fresh wave of dread coursing through my veins. We were trapped. Dude! What the hell was that? Dave's voice trembled, breaking through the suffocating silence. He gripped the gurney, knuckles white against the metal frame, as if it were all that held him steady. The shadows became thicker, twisting and writhing in the corners of my vision. I made myself look away, focusing on the patient instead. He lay there, paler now, breaths shallow and rasping. I had always been taught to focus on the living, but the chill creeping down my spine made me reconsider. "Call dispatch!" I shouted, needing to drown out the terror surging around us. But before Dave could respond, the whispers morphed into dissonant weeping, an anguished choir rising and falling in the air. With shaking hands, I reached for the radio, fumbling under the pressure of dread. Dispatch. We need immediate backup. My voice sounded distant, swallowed by the cacophony that had taken life in that room. The patient's breathing faltered. I leaned closer, his eyes fluttering open, revealing irises that were devoid of life. They stared through me, clouded like a winter pond. You, shouldn't he have come here, he rasped, his voice a sinister echo of the whispers. What are you talking about? I stammered, pulling away as if his words were venomous. You're in a safe place. But the shadows, they began to quiver, swirling with malicious intent, wrapping tighter around us as if to confirm his statement. Help, the patient's voice cracked, and suddenly, the lights flickered once more. They blinked out entirely, leaving us in darkness. The only source of illumination came from the dim glow of the gurney's light, casting ghostly shapes that danced across the walls. Dave? I called into the smothering black. Panic clawed at my throat. What is happening? I heard a rustle behind me and spun, heart racing. But instead of my partner's reassuring figure, I was met with that shadow again, creeping, a grotesque silhouette with elongated limbs and a head that twisted at unnatural angles. Run! I shot down the hall, abandoning the thin light of the gurney behind. The air crackled as if alive, electric, with the whispers now intermingling with eerie laughter that echoed off the walls. I stumbled toward the door, slamming into it, desperately rattling the handle. It refused to budge, sealed by something far darker than the cold metal. Dave! I shouted again, but all I could hear was that terrible laughter growing, a chorus welcoming me into its depths. Then came the slam, again and again. It reverberated against the walls, rattling my bones, shaking my resolve. The shadows writhed closer, eager tendrils reaching out, twisting around my legs, pulling me back into the interrogation of the darkness. Suddenly, a warm hand clamped down on my shoulder, and I jolted, spinning around to face Dave. His eyes were wild, fear and desperation melding into something monstrous. Let us go. He yelled, and for a brief moment, something like hope flared in my chest. But before we could move, I felt it, a cold, clammy grip locking around my wrist, dragging me back just as Dave tried to pull me away. The shadow lunged, revealing a rotting, gaping maw filled with teeth that gleamed like the blades of a butcher. I screamed, the sound tearing through the veil of chaos, but the creature was upon me, consuming every ounce of the air in the room. Just when I thought I would be swallowed whole, the lights flickered and then surged back to life, bright and blinding. For a fleeting second, I saw the figure recoil, retreating into the darkness, and then it was gone. Dave stood frozen, eyes glued to the spot where the shadow had vanished, and in that quiet, fragile moment, a new sound emerged. A soft, almost soothing humming. It filled the air, harmonious and deliberate, cutting through the stillness that followed the chaos, creating a siren-esque call that began to drown out everything else. Do you hear that? I whispered, heart still racing. The murmuring grew stronger, inviting, enthralling. I felt my heart want to follow it, to surrender everything to that chilling lullaby. But when I looked back at the patient, his eyes were wide open, pupils dilating into dark pools, the echo of the whispers entwining with his voice once more. Don't listen, it only wants to take you too. And in that moment, something changed within me. I felt pulled in every direction, each whisper a sharp blade, carving a way to something waiting behind the veil. The humming grew louder, and I cursed my own heart for responding, awakening something ancient buried deep beneath the fragile reality around us. Then the lights flickered again, the connection severing, plunging me back into that suffocating blackness. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me was Dave's terrified shout, and then a sharp, final silence. And as I stumbled backwards, reality blurred, fraying at the edges, leaving me caught between the world of the living and the twisted darkness that lay beyond. The door behind me creaked ominously, shifting slowly as if it were being released from its bindings, revealing a void beyond. And in that grotesque silence, the weeping started anew, drowning out any chance of escape. I stood on the precipice, but I was tipping closer, closer toward whatever lurked within the abyss, unable to resist the pull of the shadows. My breath caught an icy hand brushed against my cheek. I turned, but there was nothing but darkness. And then the soothing hum returned, filling every void, wrapping around me like a soft shroud, and I realized I was about to discover the true meaning of being alone in the dark. The hum swallowed me whole. It wrapped around my thoughts, its alluring cadence blurring my senses, making everything else fade into a distant echo. With each pulse of the sound, I felt my heartbeat synchronize, reducing everything to a singular purpose, to step deeper into that void, to embrace the shadows, but buried under the enchanting melody, I felt a reminder. Dave. Panic surged anew, sharp and urgent. Dave! I screamed, voice cracking in the silent abyss, but the darkness around me swallowed my words. I blinked, choked on the thick air, and forced myself to squeeze my eyes shut, fighting against the siren call. Then a breeze, cold and biting, swept through the corridor, carrying with it the faint scent of something rotting. I opened my eyes, heart racing. The gurney stood motionless in the flickering light of the ambulance, its surface speckled with dark stains that previously had gone unnoticed. I wanted to flee, but the shadows coiled around my legs, anchoring me to the spot like chains of despair. "Do not be afraid," a voice whispered, smooth as silk yet laced with malice. "You are exactly where you need to be." The echoing presence slithered through my mind, curling around my next breath, suffocating my instincts. The humming grew louder, transforming into a cascading melody of laughter and cries, both beautiful and terrifying. And then, impossibly, the shadows began to shift, taking shape into fleeting figures, half-formed silhouettes that resembled the faces of long-lost patients. "Join us!" they sang, their mouths moving in a grotesque harmony. Each word pierced my heart like needles, enticing and horrifying at once. Names I remembered: Jay, Sarah, Lucas, each one twisted and warped, emerging from the layers of chaos, haunting eyes boring into my soul that I stumbled back, dizzy from both fear and the relentless call of their chorus. I wanted to turn away, to dismiss their twisted invitations, but guilt began to grasp at me, relentless and cloying. "Help us!" one of them cried, a sound dragging me closer to the edge. "You let us down. You turned away when we needed you most. Stop it!" I cried out, flailing, but the shadows were relentless, drawing closer, pulling my guilt to the surface. I didn't mean to. A cacophony erupted behind me, a clash of screaming voices that echoed off the once familiar walls, now marred with blood and whispers of betrayal. I turned, and the sight locked my breath in place. It wasn't just the patient, the walls seemed alive, as if they had birthed aches and pains, with faces twisted in agony chiseled into the very fabric of the building. The spirit of the ambulance whispered my name, a chilling warning echoing from every corner. It remembered us all, the calls answered, the lives lost, the guilt buried beneath the weight of duty. It yearned to claim what was rightfully its. "Do not let them take you," the fading voice of the patient added, breaking through the humming chaos. They were never helpless. They fought back. The shadows transformed, morphing, writhing with sudden ferocity, and in a heartbeat, they coalesced into a single ominous form, towering over us, grotesque features oozing malice. Its eyes burned like dying stars, filled with a hunger born from despair. Before I could move, it reached out, limbs extending impossibly long, its fingers curling like the claws of a beast, brimming with intent. "Join us in eternal lament, or become part of our story." And then the ground trembled beneath me, the darkness swirling, pulling me toward that eternal pit. I felt the air rush past me as I stumbled back, the shadows curling around my ankles in a desperate embrace. "No!" I screamed, panic clawing at my throat. I desperately searched for an escape, for Dave, and there he was, silhouetted just beyond the reach of light, his eyes wide and trembling. "Help!" His voice broke through the chaos. "It won't let me go." A shadow lunged at him, a force of pure dread manifesting in the form of a dark, extruding arm. My heart shattered at the sight of my partner as he grappled against the nightmarish presence. "Dave!" I shouted, reaching toward him, but the shadows ensnared me, dragging me closer to the ground where the darkness pooled like blood. That I reached out, desperate to grasp his hand, our fingers almost touching when without warning, a bolt of electricity sparked through the air, and the lights began flickering violently, more erratic than before. They illuminated the grotesque form that hovered before us, each flicker revealing more of its repulsive features. Searing pain erupted in my wrist. I looked down in horror to see the shadowy tendrils wrapping tighter, pulling me. Just before the black swallowed me whole, I caught a glimpse of Dave's face, a reflection of terror and despair, the last look I'd see before the darkness sealed us in. And there, just as darkness enveloped me, I heard it, the last haunting note of that discordant melody, echoing, vibrating through the void, whispering promises of terror yet to come. I was suddenly very, very aware that we were not alone in the dark, and the shadows were eager for company. The suffocating stillness of the void engulfed me, a thick haze that settled on my chest like a blanket of dread. I gasped, feeling the shadows twist around me, tasting the rancid fear in the air, forcing me to confront the raw terror that pulsed through my veins. My world had collapsed into an abyss, and I was its prisoner, a wretch among anguished souls. Just beyond the void's grasp, flickers of memory interlaced with the encroaching darkness. I recalled the faces, each imprinted in my mind like a curse. The haunting echo of their pleas intertwined with the chilling laughter that hadn't ceased, filling the air with dissonance. "Help us!" they sobbed. "You can't run from us." I was still reaching for Dave, even as the shadows grasped me tighter. Fear morphed into rage, and I fought back against the inertia. The flickering light pulsed dimly, revealing distorted images floating just out of reach, a tableau of despair and hopelessness where the very walls of the ambulance morphed into a tapestry of torment. And then, I saw them, figures swaying within the depths of the darkness, their forms flickering like dying embers. It was as if they were trapped in a twisted version of reality, where they lived out the moments of their suffering for eternity. Faces contorted in agony replayed the final seconds of their lives as they drifted in and out of sight, and amongst them, one figure began to distinguish itself. "Luna," it whispered, its voice clinging to the edges of my sanity. Before I could process my shock, the shadows pulled back to give way, revealing the ghostly outline of a petite woman, dressed in the familiar uniform of our paramedic team. Her eyes screamed a terror that merged with despair, though her face was strangely serene. It was as if she was the unwitting messenger for the others, a conduit between the living and the forsaken. "Luna." I choked, recognition flooding through me. She was one of the brave souls lost on a call gone wrong, the kind of call that had haunted my nightmares since one I had tried to forget. "What happened to you? Why are you here?" "Not here," she whispered, her gaze distant as if she were gazing through me, into another realm. "Not safe. We're trapped. We didn't think it could follow us." The shadows writhed around us, echoing a sinister laugh, a cruel reminder of the control they held. "There is no escaping what lurks beneath," Luna rasped. "You have to help us find peace. Their stories remain unfinished, and so will yours, unless you listen. You must unite us, or you will join the darkness, just like us." As her spectral form began to dissolve into the familiar chaos, I felt the grip of the shadows momentarily slacken. I took a breath, and the rancid air clouded my lungs, the acrid taste of despair coated my tongue, but I couldn't let it break me. My eyes found Dave's again. He was fighting against the supernatural force constraining him, his expression one of raw horror that twisted like a knife in my heart. "Luna!" I screamed, but her figure dissipated like wisps of smoke. "Don't go." The shadows renewed their assault, swirling relentlessly as the cacophony of voices crescendoed around me. "Join us! Join us!" they chanted, the sing-song rhythm growing more desperate and impatient. I felt the pulsing energy build around Dave, a violent whirlpool of malevolence aimed to drag him deeper into its core. "Luna!" I gasped. "What do I do?" Suddenly, the air around me grew colder, and the shadows shifted yet again. Now, it felt as if hands were reaching through the dark, grasping, clawing, and tugging at the fabric of my sanity. I sensed the malevolence sharpening, a blade of despair aimed directly at my heart. Without thinking, I screamed, "I want to let you take him." I refuse. In an instant, a blinding light exploded around me, igniting my entire surroundings in a cascade of fiery illumination. The shadows cried out in agony, retreating, and in that moment of clarity, I saw Dave as he truly was, flesh and dreaming hope amidst an abyss of lost souls. With that breath of strength, I stumbled forward, ready to grasp his hand. But the ground beneath us cracked, a chasm opening wide, spewing forth the rancid smells of decay. I felt myself slipping, consumed by an overwhelming force pulling me away. Dave's eyes widened in terror as I faltered. "No!" he shouted, reaching toward me. With one final surge of desperation, I summoned every ounce of my will. My voice burst forth, an anguished anthem amidst the whispers, "Together." Hands clawed at me, shadows scraping against my skin, but I pressed forward, breaking through the dying light. Just as our fingers began to touch, the ground crumbled beneath him. Time stretched thin, I felt the darkness roar in fury, break. Snap. And as I felt myself getting sucked back into the depths of despair, the last thing I heard was the echoing laughter of unseen horrors, mixed with the desperate wails of souls asking for liberation, my scream lost within the whirlwind. The shadows had consumed Dave, and in that swirling darkness, I realized I wasn't merely a spectator anymore, I was part of the very horror that blanketed my once honorable duty. And then, just as everything faded into lifeless gray, a pair of malevolent eyes opened wide in the dark, locking with mine as a chilling whisper slithered through the gloom. "We're just getting started." The crushing weight of the void clung to me, a shroud woven from memories I wished to forget but could not escape. My senses dulled in the aftermath of Dave's disappearance, confusion mingling with terror. Flickers of phantom images danced at the peripheries of my vision, broken bodies encased in sheets, frantic parents seeking answers from uniformed strangers. The shadows shifted, coiling around me, whispering cruel secrets just beyond comprehension. "It's a game," they taunted, "and you're playing right into their hands." I stumbled backward, my pulse racing, the echoes of my last moments with Dave replaying like a cursed record. I blinked against the swirling darkness, fearing what it might reveal. Each inhalation felt like an invitation to deeper madness, and yet the specter of Luna lingered in my mind, the message tangled within her warning. "You must unite us." What did that mean? Who were they? I was alone, trapped in this ghastly void, and I had no idea how to confront the malignant forces threatening to claim me. As if in reply, the air grew thick with a palpable tension, and the shadows twisted, forming a grotesque tableau, a pale, blood-soaked hand emerging from the darkness, grasping, rising from under the ambulance I could no longer see but could unmistakably feel. A tremor shot through my legs. Panic clawed at my throat as a translucent face surfaced alongside the hand, its wide eyes void of life. "Help!" it shrieked, a garbled echo of pain that pierced my heart. The voice twisted into a cacophony of shrieks, voices pleading for release, swirling into a deafening crescendo that made my ears bleed. I stumbled backward into more shadows that twirled and swayed, eager to pull me deeper into despair. Each whisper tore at my mind. "Can't you hear them?" they pleaded. "Can't you feel their anguish?" I pressed my palms against my ears, desperate to block them out, as I saw more hands clawing upward, children, mothers, fathers, all lost in the chaos of that day, and now in this eternal torment. The depth of their sorrow bore down on me, a weight so heavy I feared it might crush me. "Unite us," I thought. How? Before I could seek an answer, the swirling darkness thickened, and I saw Luna's figure re-emerge, more defined yet spectral. Her eyes spoke volumes, a mixture of sadness and urgency. "You don't have to suffer alone," she urged, but the shadows snickered, drowning her words in sinister harmonies that I knew I should run. I knew I should turn back to fight the tide of despair, but a magnetic force seemed to root me in place. The hands around me reached with desperation, their fingers brushing against my skin, feeling both icy and feverish simultaneously. I was teetering on the edge of their world and my own, and the allure of joining them became intoxicating. "Your stories, they aren't just memories. They're anchors," Luna cried, as her voice shattered through the chaos, and her form flickered violently, distorting between this plane and another. The shadows screeched in protest, tight-lipped about the truth. The ground trembled beneath me, and the vaporous forms grew restless, swirling in an unsettling frenzy. "Listen!" Luna shouted, her voice reverberating. "You must remember each fragment is a key. Find them, feel their fear, their pain. Only then can the door open, and they can be free." That fact rooted itself deeply within me, igniting a flicker of hope against insurmountable dread. I closed my eyes and screamed against the oblivion swirling around me, "Your names. I want your names." In a moment that felt both like eternity and a heartbeat, the suffocating darkness hesitated, allowing a thin thread of piercing light to breach the edges of my consciousness. Whispers unfurled around me, a language of the forgotten, their names lacing my heart with a desperate longing. One by one, they surfaced within the suffocating void, their stories unraveling like ghostly threads pulling tighter around me. I felt their loss wash over me, their experiences intertwining with my own disillusionment. A child's giggle haunted my ears, another's plaintive scream resonated in my chest, yet, above it all, the undeniable sensation of being watched grew, a malevolent presence festering just outside the periphery of my vision. "Join us," a guttural voice whispered chillingly, echoing from the confines of the abyss that beckoned me. Suddenly, the ground beneath me violently shook again, this time cracking open beneath my feet. The figures began to slip back into the dark, their faces contorted in agony. I grasped for air, pleading, "No. Stay. Don't leave." But they thrashed against the chains of memory tethering them to this nightmare. Everything around me began collapsing, the walls of the world I once knew crumbling into a swirling void of anguished faces and endless darkness. "I will unite you!" I screamed, my voice lost in the roar of the supernatural cacophony, and then, from the depths, something unearthly lunged forward, a pair of claws, long and gnarled, raking across the earth toward me, stretching as if to devour my very essence. I was caught in the impossible choice between succumbing to the darkness or fighting for the lost souls pleading for release. In that harrowing moment, as the gnarled claws breached the threshold and closed the distance between me and oblivion, a chorus of voices screeched in rage and desperation, "We are the price." For a fleeting second, I felt a sense of clarity, a call to action pulsing through me, but the final echoing words slithered through me like frozen ice, leaving me trembling and paralyzed. "Will you join us?" And as the monstrous claws descended, the last of Luna's light flickered out, the shadows surged, and I felt the icy grip of fate, the final embrace of an impending darkness swallowing me whole. The abyss was near, and I was caught in collision of horror and choice, a soul tethered to the legacy of the damned, forever lost in the void. The world as I knew it fractured, dissolving into a kaleidoscope of terror, colors bleeding into shadows and whispers morphing into shrieks. Claws, I could almost feel them dragging against the very fabric of the reality I clung to. My heart raced, a frantic drum summoning the dead, the vanished, the souls anchored in the liminal space that tethered us both to life and to the nightmare. As the darkness swirled faster, with rogue hands clawing up from below, a familiar warmth enveloped me momentarily, pulling me back from the brink. I thought of Dave, his face flashing before my eyes, his laughter, his stories, dreams we once shared, and an unwavering loyalty that cut through time itself. The thought surged through me, igniting a defiant flicker of courage. "Not today!" I shouted, bounding forward, with no clear path to salvation, but a desperate need to hold on to the tether of what was real. That I stumbled into a pocket of stillness, an eerie calm amidst the chaos, where I could think not just in fragments but as a whole. "Each fragment is a key," Luna's words resonated anew. I scanned the phantasmagoria, heart pounding, yearning for the pieces they offered. Beneath the havoc, I grasped the fading remnants of memory, the faces of the lost swirling around, their anguish spilling over like ink in water. "What are your names?" I rattled out, despite the din of whispers clamoring for my despair. But just as the shadows narrowed in, more voices surged, each syllable a grating plea for recognition that lit aflame the edges of a fraying hope. "I see you. I feel you," I yelled, gripping the smothering darkness. Yet with each name I summoned, the shadows responded with agonizing wails, curling toward me as if caught in an unseen storm. What could I offer them in return for their torment? Suddenly, the flashes of their lives surged within me, a mother's lullaby, a child's giggle at a park, a father's hands weaving dreams from nothing. Each note of joy flavored with painful memories, which twisted like a knife in my heart. My grasp of the spectral threads tightened. Name yourselves, I implored once more, my mind racing. But the whispering dark threatened to drown me, a tide that lapped at the edges of my sanity. From within the depths, a form began to materialize, an insidious figure woven from their collective despair, a grotesque tapestry spinning into being. Teeth gleamed like shards of ice, and eyes glowed with an uncanny phosphorescence, swirling like distant stars. Then the agonizing scream erupted, resonating through the ether. We are lost. The entity shrieked, its voice a cacophony of thousand pleas collapsing into one. You cannot release what you do not know. But I do know. I shouted, the trembling fervor igniting my resolve. I know you. I know your pain. Give me your stories, your memories, let me carry you. I spread my arms wide, feeling the warmth of their desperation envelop me, wrapping me in their sorrow and hope, a paradoxical embrace teetering on the edge of oblivion. With that, the shadows screeched in fury, flames of anguish licking at the edges of my vision like wild animals caged within. It's not that easy. They shrieked in unison, the cacophony rising like a tidal wave that threatened to drown the vulnerable flame of resistance I ignited. As darkness pulsated like a heart, the ground shook again, but this time with a ferocity that transitioned from a tremor to an earthquake underfoot. I stumbled backward as the abyss oscillated, the claws re-emerging in a slick of darkness that swept in from all directions, their intentions clear. Join us. The voice was smooth but dripping with malice, reverberating through my core. Tendrils snaked out from the surrounding shadows, long and gnarled, they beckoned seductively, promising security against the relentless turmoil. Memories of doubt flashed through my mind, those whispers from that fateful day, the fear in Dave's eyes as we stood in that vacant space, wondering what lurked beyond our comprehension. With a sudden twist, I envisioned a parallel path, a loop binding those lost souls together, woven in darkness yet thickening with the light of recognition. I will help you remember. I cried out, desperation hoisting me upward as if I were rising amid the stormy ocean, reaching, but the claws surged, snatching at my vision, tugging on shadows just beyond the shape of the ghastly figure, screaming against the pressure of the moment. You think you can save what has been sacrificed? What has been lost? You will succumb to despair as they did. A sudden clarity flashed in my mind, the realization I had been missing. Your names are your power. I understood in an instant, comprehending that they needed not just to be recalled but acknowledged, honored, and woven into my own existence. In that moment, as an eruption of energy blasted outwards from my core, every name bubbled forth my lips, a continuous chant laced with fury, loss, wrath, acceptance, and most importantly, love. The darkness recoiled, each name striking it like a relentless arrow until space itself vibrated with their echoing power. But then, betrayal from the heart of the chaos unfolded, a violent tremor rose and darkness churned violently as gnarled figures ripped free from the underworld, their eyes filled with rage directed at me. You dare challenge our agony? They rasped, the sound like shattered glass being ground into the earth. Just as I began to regain control, a scream pierced the madness, God's echo, rich and sharp, remember. The clock has turned. And then it happened, a fissure opened beneath me, a chasm swallowing the figures with desolate howls. In that moment, I felt my soul ripped from my vessel, struggling against the tide. A vortex formed, darkness spiraling into itself, light seeping away as the last voice shrieked, "We are the price." I was yanked forward, pulled into the void, and I realized too late, I had become the story. With a sickening jolt, I plunged into the abyss, surrounded by the relentless scream of the lost, and all I could sense was despair closing like a fist around my throat. In the last fleeting moment of lucidity, I caught a glimpse of something far more horrific lurking within the dark, a polished flicker of recognition in the eyes of the cloaked figure that stood resolute in the waiting shadows. It wasn't just darkness, it was a predator. And then as the faintest glimmer of hope flickered, eclipsed by the gathering darkness, I heard their words clear as daylight. Will you sacrifice yourself to save them? As the void engulfed me, the revelation hit like a tide, and I realized, the answer was coming not from me, but from the darkness waiting to consume us all. The silence that followed was suffocating, the kind where even one's own breath felt like a betrayal against the void. As the spinning darkness swallowed me whole, I felt an unrelenting pull toward the defining memories of the lost souls. They intertwined with my own, seeping into the crevices of my identity, each moment painful yet undeniably vivid. It felt like a mad dance of despair and fleeting hope, a tragic ballet where the stage had shattered and descended into the abyss. My senses drowned in the chaos of shades flickering in and out of existence. One moment, I was enveloped by the vibrant memories of a child lost in a winter park, the next, confronted by the guttural sobs of a mother wailing for her offspring. They merged into a syncopated heartbeat of agony, each pulse igniting a deep-rooted fear within me, a fear that I too could be lost amongst the ruins of human emotion, but I could feel another presence lurking just outside this waking nightmare, a malevolence woven into the very fabric of the shadows. It breathed, a chilling, ethereal whisper clawing at the edges of my consciousness. Each time I thought I could discern its outline, it shifted, twisting away from clarity, taunting me with its elusive nature, a predator playing with its meal. Who are you? I cried out, my voice echoing, swallowed by the tumult. What do you want? You've already given me more than you can fathom, dear vessel, the voice slithered, smooth and cool like dark velvet wrapping around my throat. But what is a little more sacrifice when you plunge into the depths of our desire? So much pain, so many moments, why not share them willingly? The ground beneath me began to pulsate with dark energy, vibrating in a rhythm akin to a heartbeat growing ever quicker. I closed my eyes, summoning every ounce of strength to resist. I would not yield to this entity. I refuse. I screamed, but the darkness only cackled in response, stretching tendrils that gripped as tightly as iron chains. Suddenly, a burst of light illuminated the void, a beam that pierced not just the darkness but the very core of my memories. They exploded with clarity. I saw Darlene and Tom, their faces contorted in anguish, eyes wide as they faced their worst fears. They were not just shadows trapped in the dark, they were fragments of the past, unacknowledged and desperate for release. Help us. Darlene's voice echoed within me, heavy with longing. Help us, please. In that instant, I understood. They weren't asking for more pain, they longed for recognition, to emerge from the forgotten maelstrom of anguish. Yet just as I felt the tides of fury recede, the sinister voice curled back, sinister and hissing. There lies your greatest fear, O brave savior, acknowledgement. What treachery will you unleash in doing so? Flashes from the corners of my mind erupted without warning, visions of monstrous shadows waiting to feast upon hope, waiting for despair to bloom unfettered. A beast made of darkness and bone flickered just beyond my periphery, gnashing its teeth against the walls of existence. What do you know of my pain? I challenged, my voice steadier now, igniting embers of defiance. Tell me who you truly are. But the darkness simply laughed, a long, echoing sound that vibrated through the marrow of my bones. I am a product of your desires, your anguish, your guilt. I am every voice you've ever silenced, every cry for help you've overlooked. And now, sweet child, who do you think will sacrifice themselves? In that moment of wild suspicion, a chilling realization pierced my heart like a frozen shard. The whispered sacrifice wasn't for me to endure alone. The shadows didn't seek just one soul, they reveled in the chaos of many, the tragic waltz of despair squeezed into one singular entity, a multi-layered horror demanding our subservience. The ground began to tremble violently, and the shadows converged, baring teeth that glinted with anticipation. Will you protect them? Came the voice, smoother and more dangerous than before. Will you? Suddenly, a memory erupted with clarity of the last whisper. Of Dave, once so familiar yet now a ghostly cadence, we're all together, remember? His words came rushing with the force of a flood, grounding me even amidst encroaching dread that I and the whirlwind of chaos. Faces emerged from the depths around me: Darlene, Tom, and Mark, their silent cries wrapping around me like a shroud. "You may lose yourself," the entity murmured, tendrils tightening with a sinister grip. "But how far would you go for their redemption?" At that very moment, the shadows congealed into grotesque forms, grotesque visages wearing faces I once cherished, morphing into disturbing parodies of their former selves. Their eyes burned with unquenchable hunger, waiting for the word that would escape my lips. A choice pulsed within me, a single heart-pounding decision. Would I name them free, or would I let them dissolve into another tragedy? And then, heavier than the darkness surrounding, a chilling thought flickered within, igniting fear and resolve in equal measure: was recognition the only way out? Just as I felt the thrum of existential dread nearly suffocating my resolve, the last echoes of memory blinked away. Will you sacrifice yourself, or them? And then, from the edge of the darkness where light faded, I glimpsed a figure urging me to speak, to utter the names binding me to this moment and choose, not for myself, but for them. That I opened my mouth to scream the truth to the shadows, but as the light faded into nothingness, I understood with stark horror that the words "wouldn't he just burn?" They could unravel everything. As eyes of the damned settled upon me, hungry and expectant, I began to falter, until the roar of the shadows erupted around me. And in that moment, it hit me: the predator was not the darkness, but the choices I had yet to face. Then came an unholy whisper, chilling and magnificent: "Which sacrifice will write the story anew?" Before I could grasp the implications, the chilling laughter erupted once more, swirling in a cacophony of voices, echoing ominously as I stood on the precipice of my surrender. And just then, I realized I wasn't the only one poised to plunge into the abyss. All around me, the whispers turned into screams, pleading for a savior or a killer. Like moths drawn to a flame, the phantoms flared up, their eyes turning towards me in unison, as if all souls grasped in darkness awaited my decree. That I, and that moment, brimming with fear and chaos, the world shattered further around me, and I knew the truth would break me, or I would consume it whole. I stood in the eye of a swirling storm of despair, where threads of familiar faces stretched out toward me, becoming more grotesque with every heartbeat. Each visage morphed further into a nightmarish reflection, a cruel echo of what they once were, pulsating with a hunger that was unsettlingly familiar. The shadows leaned in, cloaked in anticipation, forming a thrumming pulse of their own, an agonizing harmony of lost hopes and relentless fears. "Choose." The malevolent voice swept through the air like a poisonous wind, wrapping its fingers around my throat. "Will it be them or you?" For a chilling instant, I saw visions of my loved ones, lives lived in mundane splendor, now intermingled with moments irretrievably marred by tragedy. Darlene's laughter echoed, only to hollow into a desperate plea. Tom's smile was replaced by the grim knowing of his fate, while Mark's unwavering loyalty transformed into a spectral remnant, whispering accusations of my cowardice. "Your heart is the key," the distorted figure of Dave grinned, though his mouth was stitched into a rictus of despair. "They thrived on your love, and now it's your own that will shatter them." Trembling, I fought against the swell of darkness that promised an easy escape. The entity's presence grew nearer, a thickening fog that threatened to suffocate every thought and ounce of resistance I possessed. I shut my eyes, desperate for clarity amid the clamor, an attempt to summon strength from the very shadows that sought to consume me whole. "Can't you see?" It laughed, a melody dripping with malice, a symphony designed to evoke my deepest fears. "They'll perish in your silence, and yet you'll also be free. Your sacrifice won't signify loss, but a tangled redemption, one that births new horrors." I gasped. Beneath the avalanche of shadows, gnashing teeth beckoned with promises of release, but with every flicker of hope emerged the sharp reminder of consequence. In essence, surrendering my voice would chronicle more than a mere act of love, it would deepen the chasms of despair in unrecognizable ways. A sudden surge of warmth brushed against my arm, a memory unfurling like ancient parchment. Darlene's embrace enveloped me, but unlike the warmth of her laughter, it bore the frigid touch of death, as if the memory had been iced over, leaving only the ghost of what once was. "You can't save us if you don't choose," she whispered, her voice barely a wisp, twisting with agony. Don't listen. Tom's spectral form surged toward me as the veils of shadows writhed, trying to consume him. We're entangled in your choices. Fight back. You can wrench us from this nightmare. But as I looked into their eyes, Darlene's filled with dread, Tom's blazing with panic, I felt the steady compression of time unraveling. Each second became a haunted echo of moments that could slip away forever if I wavered. Should I name them, or reinstate the terrors that bound us together, interlacing our fates into the darkest fabric? Every heartbeat thrummed with urgency. I was cornered, ensnared by my own treacherous duty. I can't, I whispered, my voice trembling. Choose. Echoed through the void, and in that critical heartbeat, I opened my eyes to gaze into the unending obsidian night. I understood then the shadows weren't merely hungry for blood, they craved my essence, the very will that ignited suffering into existence. I stumbled, grappling for an answer, heart racing against the ghostly tides, dominated by the call for my resolution, a demented game where every move counted. In that fragile moment, thick with pressure, the brilliance of a new vision snapped into view, dreadful yet alluring. The others who had sacrificed had birthed abominations, shadows now steeped in grief and pain, an unending cycle of torment. No sacrifice would truly save them, they were eternally entangled in the void alongside me. Your choice can undo this, the voice slithered, coiling tighter with a sickening sense of indecision. Or it can forge our new future where those who weren't brave enough to choose become as I am. A roar of sinister acknowledgement echoed through the void, punctuated by the agonized screams of souls desperate for resolution. Each face twisted grotesquely, urging me forward, their tortured eyes swirling with despair, and then I understood, in the eyes of those I loved, I saw not hope, but the very shadows I feared, the curse that demanded one more sacrifice to rewrite our fates. My breath turned ragged as they all began to inch closer, their forms merging into a grotesque melee, each face pleading, promising, taunting. Do it! Came the resounding chorus, a symphony of shadows echoing through the deep recesses of another truth. Or succumb fully to the abyss. Suddenly, an earth-shattering howl erupted, shaking the very memory of existence, and in the chaos, it dawned on me that this fight wasn't just against the shadows surrounding me, but one woven through the fabric of space and time itself. That in one final moment of clarity, I summoned every ounce of will. I seized the threads of anguish, tangled yet beautiful, refusing to waver any longer. I choose to remember. I screamed, knowing the shattering truth that echoed back would dissolve the painful ties, but that revelation could demand the unspeakable, just as the shadow forms of my loved ones surged towards me, dark mouths opening in shock. I felt my consciousness fracture, an unforeseen surge of energy cascading through the void, drawing me into an expanse far beyond my comprehension. And then the world around me shattered, revealing the swirling vortex of possibilities, as the glints of light spilled forth, but within that brightness was another chilling truth: I was not alone in this dance of despair, and the depths of the night were set to unveil someone far more sinister lurking just out of sight. Before I could grasp the breadth of what awaited me, two piercing eyes glinted from the shadows behind the veil. They weren't those of my loved ones, nor of the malevolence that sought to claim me. They were something far older, far more hungry. Welcome home, it purred, as the darkness closed in once more. And in that chilling moment, I realized the true door to the horrors had only just begun to open. The darkness folded around me, almost sentient in its depth, as I was suspended in a liminal space, half dreaming and half awake. The bright lights that had momentarily pierced the void faded, melting away like candle flames in a tempest. A heavy silence loomed, pregnant with dread, as if the void itself was holding its breath. My heart thudded loudly in my chest, each pulse resonating through the shadows gathering at the edges of my consciousness. Welcome home, the presence purred again, its voice curling around me like smoke coiling, suffocating. I couldn't see its form, but I felt the weight of its gaze, a palpable thing, hot and invasive. Memories of my loved ones clawed at my mind, entangling in a sinister dance with an equally foreign despair that pressed in from all sides. Show yourself, I rasped, my words fumbled like shattered glass. The air thickened, stinging my throat as I bent against an unseen force. You think you can toy with me? A low, throaty chuckle reverberated in the dark, the shadows rippling as if caught in a mirage. "Oh, but darling, this is only the beginning. The true game unfolds when the light dims further." As if in response to its taunts, I felt a pull deep within me, a chilling urge to plunge into the unknown beyond the shadows. Fleeing was no longer an option, I was bound to this malevolence, wrapped in ties of anguish that threatened to snap me in two. The echo of my last choice rang in my ears. "I choose to remember." Images burst forth unbidden, a shrouded figure, distorted and anguished, clawing at a monstrous maw that sought to consume everything pure and beautiful. It twisted as the darkness beckoned, begging for salvation while simultaneously reaching for despair with a grotesque longing. I knew that figure. It was me, my own reflection wrenched into a parody of itself. "Do you enjoy the view?" The voice mocked, slithering through the void like a serpent. "You fractured, yet you remain so deliciously aware of the torment surrounding you. You are caught in a web of self-pity, and it will lead to your ultimate oblivion." "No!" I exclaimed, forcing breath through my constricted throat. "I want to let you dictate my fate, nor the fate of those I love." But as I stood firm, a strange vibration hummed through the darkness, an insidious current that tugged at the edges of my sanity. The walls of the void rippled with what felt like suffering, layered thick like fog, a disjointed melody of sorrow that twisted into a cacophony of unearthly wails, a sound both familiar and horrifying. The sound coalesced into a chorus of desperate moans, voices I recognized as belonging to those who had sacrificed themselves before me. Their agonized cries demanded to be heard, wrapping around my heart with iron fingers, squeezing tighter with every pang of remorse. "We linger," they echoed, a dissonant harmony of anguish compelling me to listen. "You cannot escape this reality, only confront it. Face it, face it." The shadows chanted, swirling closer, ever closer, a relentless tide. I felt the ground beneath me shift, expanding into a horrific vista riddled with the echoes of the torment they had undergone. I could almost see them, the lost souls transformed into grotesque silhouettes, each entangled in chains made from memories of guilt and regret. That in the eye of that storm, I glimpsed Darlene, her face a twisted mask marred by infinite sorrow and longing. "You cannot save us," she cried, her eyes vacant yet imploring. "You must decide between us, the choice is yours to bear." "No, I refuse," I shouted, feeling the dread suffusing my being, overwhelming me once more. I couldn't let their suffering dictate my actions, but as the shadows encroached, their presence pulsating with grim vigor, I felt the pulse of darkness unleash a fresh horror. A figure emerged from the void, long-limbed and elongated, emerging with the taunting grace of a predatory beast. Glimmering eyes drilled through the gloom, fixated on my quaking form, a twisted smile spreading across lips that did not belong yet were grotesquely familiar. "Did you think I would remain hidden?" it taunted as the air froze around me. Its voice was a silken caress, teasingly sharp. "Your fear ushers me forth, and the tidings I bring are not of mercies, but of new horrors, a true reckoning for the cowardice that binds your loved ones." The acrid smell of despair filled my lungs, and in that moment, I couldn't breathe. Darkness encircled me, a noose that squeezed tighter than all that had come before. The shadows writhed with anticipation, absorbing the despair like a sponge, and as it neared, the laughter grew, harmonizing with the choir of lost souls who had welcomed me home. "Are you ready to sacrifice it all?" it whispered intimately, the air thick with anticipation. "To unwind the threads that shackle them? Or will you succumb to the abyss, as so many before you?" I stumbled, fell into the void of half-formed thoughts, the haunting question swirling in my mind like a feverish nightmare. And as fear gripped my heart once more, the shadows encroached, drawing me toward the abyss, the whispers of the past mingling with the promise of the horrific unknown. Just as I was submerged in that darkness, the forsaken souls released one final scream, shattering glass windows of reality, calling me forth from the precipice of an abyss where even the bravest dared not tread. In the fissures of that despair, I heard the chilling proclamation, "Your choice is inevitable, and when made, the night will forget your name." The sound of breaking glass echoed as the mirrors of memory cracked, and the veil tore open, revealing what lurked beneath. And just like that, a terrifying truth cascaded into view: the shadows were not mere tormentors, they were the architects of the horrors that loomed ahead, hungry for my answer. My final scream was swallowed by the darkness as I fell deeper into unknown terrors, nearing an end that held no mercy, only an unrelenting invitation. It was the laughing, I thought, that haunted me most. As the darkness consumed me, the echoes growing dizzyingly chaotic laughter intertwined with cries of anguish sang a twisted lullaby, coaxing me into despair. I wasn't just ensnared in shadows, they were alive, an ancient force pulling me deeper into a dark abyss born from every recollection, every moment I wished I could forget. But realization began to flicker in the black void. All those faces, contorted with pain and sorrow, were more than mere mirages of regret. They were my past calls, each one tethered to my very soul, a horrifying collection of lives I couldn't save. Yet now, their entwined fates were bound to mine, bleeding through that gaping rift of reality. It was suffocating, this knowledge that I was not merely observing. I was becoming one with the darkness. Together, we will wander into the night, they whispered, their voices seductively tangled with their cries, an anguished design calling for my surrender. I fought against that tide, clenching my fists, heart racing as dread wrestled furiously within me. The entity that lurked beneath the veil, spinning its web with every heartbeat, appeared in fleeting glimmers, a silhouette wavering between malevolence and recognition. I knew it. I was part of it. Even now, it draws near, a voice echoed, distorted, melancholic, until it solidified into clarity with a chilling warmth. Embrace it, and you may be set free. Embrace what? I cried, my voice wavering against the tempest surrounding me. What is this horror that you bring? Laughter rang out, sharp and jarring, filling the air as shadows thickened, wrapping around me like a constricting vine. Your ignorance is precious, child, but such sweet suffering waits for liberation through the truth. Their memories gushed forth with fierce clarity, surging torrents of faces and voices lined with agony. I was swept along in their currents, drawn into horrific snapshots of loss and suffering, the moment of rejection, the last breath of a dying child, the haunting resignation of a parent begging for mercy, and then my own name echoed in tandem with theirs. I felt it, resonating painfully within my chest. You did this, they accused, a tide rolling within the whispers. You let us down at the moment we needed you most, and now, your final reward shall be to witness our despair perpetually. In an instant, I grasped the depth of their rage. I was entangled within it. Yet, a flicker of defiance ignited, reminding me of the warmth of life I had once held in my arms, the laughter, the joy, the moments shared in sunlight, each one a beam shattering through this relentless void. No! I screamed, flinging my heart toward them, unsheathing the truth buried beneath my guilt. I never wanted this for you. I was human, and I failed. But amid the chaos, the shadows surged, engulfing my cries as the mocking laughter crescendoed. Failure is only the beginning, dear vessel. Resignation is courage's twin. And then it hit me, the elusive understanding of their cries melded painfully with my own, and awakening surged in my core. The road I walked was twisted, but it was still mine. Wasn't that what they craved? Recognition of their plight, acceptance of sorrow, but also a single chance to break free. The darkness pulsed, each heartbeat a reminder of desperation swirling in its depths, but I bore the memories of the lost on my shoulders, igniting fiercely within me, awakening anchors to a time once filled with hope. May you find peace in my memories, I uttered quietly, surrendering into their malice. Peace. They howled, scrambling fiercely as I dove into the heart of the shadows, allowing the memories to take shape around me, each syllable articulating names long forgotten, drowned in despair. I remember you all. I screamed, an unyielding fierceness slicing through the flooded air. Luna, Darlene, Tom, Mark, live on in me. Let your light bless this darkness, so you may rise. For an instant, their howls faltered, faces shimmering with recognition and something akin to gratitude amid their twisted forms. It drew forth memories of light through the swirling sorrow. Each name breathed life into my sorrow, the shadows writhing ineffectively, as if understanding the power blooming in utter acceptance. You dare challenge the depths of despair. The voice sliced through me, a sing-song lilt caught in a predatory snarl. You think your memories can protect you? You are nothing without us. I felt the shadows clawing, wrapping tighter, threatening to descend once more. I am something because of you. I countered, igniting every flicker of light. You will not take me. We share these bonds, not to cultivate pain, but to transcend it. As if on command, the air rippled with discontent, batting against my breathing. Flickers of light began bursting from the void. Their forms coalesced into a glorious tapestry of what had been lost. Shimmering silhouettes of memory strained to break free as I struggled against the monstrous claws of darkness, the weight of despair fighting fiercely to reclaim them. My sacrifice will be honored. I screamed against the din. You will not consume me. And in that vow, the shadows recoiled as radiant tendrils threads united in morning blazed across the room, igniting clarity amid the chaos. Memories of laughter rebounded through the darkness, faces once tormented now glimmering with newfound hope. Then, with one decisive final breath, I roared into the abyss. I will release you, and so shall I be free. With a cacophonous snap, the shadows fluttered, retreating as beams of light forced their way through the seams of despair, piercing my heart, but just as I felt an upward surge of liberation, an ominous howl echoed beneath a distorted murmur present, waiting in the wings, ready to claim its due. Don't you see? The shadows howled, an anguished cry teetering uncomfortably on the sinew of reality. This isn't an ending, it never was. You have merely unlocked the door. We will always come back. We are you. You are us. And just before the light could engulf me, I turned, locking eyes with a figure that filled the remnants of my shattered dreams. The familiar face smiled my own, but twisted and drenched in the tears of those long lost to the night. Welcome back, it whispered sweetly, and the moment crystallized, etched into eternity as their laughter enveloped my heart. I realized in that chilling heartbeat the horror was not gone, it lingered still behind the door I had yet to close. And I was not running toward the light. I was haunted by the truth that when the door opened, it would always want me back.